I never knew either of my grandfathers. My English grandfather was much older than my grandmother and died before I was born. And my American grandfather committed suicide in the 1930s, leaving my father to deal with it. So I don't know whether I'd ever felt that void or not, because most of my friends, most of the people I idolized were exotic older women, animagicals. And so when Christopher Isherwood came into my life, I realized he'd filled a void that I didn't know was there. I met him at a party thrown by one of the producers of Saturday Night Live. And I recognized him. I'd seen him on some documentary and seen that little blue-eyed twinkle that he had, this sort of bantam rooster effect that he gave. And I worked my way across the party to say hello to him and introduced myself, and probably was embarrassed myself in many ways, because I was telling him I'd written a book called Tales of the City, and could I send him a copy of it. And he was very gracious and said, please do send it to me. And I was shocked when he finished it and wrote that it was the best thing he'd seen since Dodie Smith, who is a hero of mine, the writer Dodie Smith. That launched a friendship that took, I would start visiting him in LA at his house in Santa Monica Canyon. And I met Don, his partner, and was charmed by both of them. It's interesting that Don was 30 years younger than he was. Well, let's see, I think that's right. Anyway, there's a big age gap there, and there's a big age gap between me and my husband, Christopher. That had no effect at the time, of course, because I hadn't met Chris yet, but the friendship with Chris was an ordinary friendship, except with this great man. We would go into town, and I remember going into the valley one time, and because there was somebody who was singing that was a friend of theirs. And so after, when I watched this slightly tragic figure up there doing her work, I leaned over to Chris and said, shades of Sally Bowles. And he said, Sally was never this dreadful. I don't think anybody heard him say that. I hope she didn't hear him say that, but he was not at all pleased with the evening. Part of the appeal of Chris Isherwood was that he filled a void in terms of gay role models. The only people that were making a noise at the time were people like Truman Capote, who equated his homosexuality with what's the word? Not perversion, but he saw it as a decadent thing. Gore Vidal never really came out. He was always very cagey about saying that he was gay, and that made him no hero of mine. So to meet this man who was very openly gay, who was cheerfully gay, and had a modern life that was rooted in the truth, which he'd established when he moved from England, and to meet this man was a relief. He was someone I could copy, I could relate to. There were gay men of my age that were out and proud of it. The group in New York who called themselves rather grandly the Violet Quill, and others, that I knew in California. So that's what made Chris different, was that he he was an old man who was out and gay and happy about it, and not living in a sort of denial of who he was. The Berlin Stories, Isherwood's great opus, that became the basis for Cabaret, which I loved already because of the movie, had a setting in a funky old apartment house with an exotic landlady. I mean, I borrowed from him a great deal in constructing Tales of the City. And other books like Single Man, which I think is his best work, that thrills me the most. I had read at the time, and Down There on a Visit. There was a lot to love about Chris. His work was autobiographical, really, and it felt like it, and so it made him seem all the more brave for having told the stories. My work, I inhabited my characters to such a degree that you didn't know which one of them was me. Or at least I don't think so. Many people thought they spotted me instantly with Michael Tolliver, but the truth is I was as present and Dee Dee and the failed debutante as any of them. Chris made it very clear that he wasn't apologetic about being gay because he felt that being gay lifted him up to a higher level, that he was better than most people who weren't gay. And I felt the same way, and I listened to that and allowed it to give me strength. He also told me that it was possible to commit art and entertainment at the same time. I have a feeling he knew that I was wincing a little bit about the fact that I was often accused of just being a bit of fluff, and I had much more to say about everything than just amusing people, and he got that, and knew that it would give me strength to hear it. It's very useful to me, even today, now that I'm an old man, to look back and see what Chris had to say about being an old man. He wrote about having what he called senile resentments, getting grumpy, in other words. And so it's been some comfort to me that when that comes up in my life, I can look to him to see how that was done.
Did you feel he aged gracefully, though? Was he, besides being a little grumpy?
Yeah, I think he did, yes. As far as I'm concerned, he had a little bit too much to drink sometimes, but a lot of writers I know are that way. But he was never mean, and he learned from his past. He knew what he was doing. Chris met Don when Don was very young, 18, they claim, and they were together at the end. Don drew Chris as he was dying, with Chris's consent. It was a very intimate relationship that continues to inspire me. Don just had a show, a retrospective in Los Angeles, at the age of 90, and his work is famous because he did portraits of people, and there's very, very few people in the world that he missed. Some very, very famous people. I remember he told a story about drawing Betty Davis, and at the end she got up and looked at the drawing and said, "Yep, that's the old bat." And he caught people, and so it made him one of the great chroniclers of our times. I have a portrait in the bedroom, two portraits, one of me and one of Chris, my Chris, not Isherwood, but my Chris Turner. and I treasure them. Chris and Don's house above Santa Monica Canyon is not a very big house. It's quite small, as a matter of fact, smaller than I remembered when I went back with Chris recently. But it's magical because it overlooks the canyon, and you see many houses from there, and the paintings on the walls are extraordinary. Not just Don's, but other contemporary artists who are seen in that house. It's a place that I don't know. I often think about what'll happen to it when Don dies, and I'm not looking forward to that day at all in any way, because that means that somebody will take it over. Maybe it'll end up as a museum, but it won't be the same. I remember going in there the first time and seeing Chris's false teeth were in the cabinet in the bathroom. And Don said, I just leave them there because they remind me of him. It's impossible for Chris to leave me completely because his writing, his diaries especially, keep him alive for me. And he says so many things that I still find applicable to my own life. There's a lot of wisdom there, and his willingness to be, to indulge his senile resentments helps, because I feel less alone knowing that he had the same instincts that I did about some things. Chris had a guru, and I think he actually wrote a translation of the Bhagavad Gita, but he never inflicted it on anybody else. It just colored his life. It just made him who he was, but he didn't feel the need to proselytize with it. My grandmother was, very airy-fairy in many ways, so it comforted me to know that she would have liked Chris, and vice versa.
Did she also read the Bhagavad Gita?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And Anna Madrigal reads it in Tales of the City.
So, any other thoughts about, just maybe what young queer folks should know about Chris, beyond what you've already said?
Well, the main thing that a young queer should know about Christopher Isherwood is that he was there before practically anybody. Being honest, living his life, enjoying his life, celebrating his partner many years. And that can't be said about very, very many queer icons. Andy Warhol was not in any way inspirational in that regard, nor was Gore Vidal or Truman Capote. It took a while for us to have heroes come along, and Isherwood was the first, as far as I'm concerned. So if you haven't read any of Isherwood's work and are curious about him, I recommend A Single Man, the Berlin Stories, Down There on a Visit. All of those will show you a lot about him as a man. A Single Man is a perfect little pearl of a novel, and I think you'll get most pleasure out of that.